wanted to first of all say that I'm honored to be reading here, and thank you so much. Can you hear me? Am I?
Nope. Yeah,
Okay. Okay, am I good? I think I'm good, yeah. Okay, great. Anyway, I'd like to thank the Writers Guild of Bloomington, at Bloomington, Tony Brewer, volunteers, everyone who's made Spoken Word Sage possible, and Poetry on Demand. Now, I am not a poet, so I buy a poem every year and I give it to my honey on our anniversary. And the theme is always lucky and love. And there's one over there right now. And if you haven't gotten a poem yet, you should get one. Anyway, there are so many poets. You know, I feel like I'm standing on a hummock of fiction in a warm, shallow sea of poetry. But here I am. I'm, of course, going to read to you from my book, If Not the Whole Truth. I'm going to read from an early part of the book. At this point in the story, Connie has left her home in Irvington, in Indianapolis, and is living in a political crash pad in Old Town Chicago. She and her friend Sunny have taken a bus to the massive November 1969 Washington, D.C. moratorium to end the war in Vietnam, and they are overnighting in a host church. At the end of the peaceful march, guided by anti-war volunteer marshals, the prankster yippies, known for their radical political street theater, want to illegally storm the Department of Unjustice to protest the unfair treatment of Bobby Seale the week before in the Chicago 8 trial, now the Chicago 7, with him, the only black defendant, severed from the case and jailed for 4 years of contempt. Connie and her friends don't agree about whether or not they should go with the yippies. Two friends, the underground indie Free Press reporter Karen and the very compelling Carlos, have already joined, and Connie is dithering. I wanted to say, of note, in this excerpt, the larger-than-life puppets mentioned were made by the activist puppet theater company founded in 1963 called Bread and Puppet. And they will be performing here in Bloomington October 1st as part of the Lotus Festival, and you don't want to miss it. So it's a rare opportunity. You won't be sorry. They're really something. Connie had to decide fast. Carlos and Karen were disappearing quickly down Constitution Avenue. Becky and Sunny were expecting her to do the right thing. She wanted to stick with peace, to be its reliable and stalwart supporter, but the legendary yippies. This would be her only chance to see them in full performance. I think this is too high. One didn't automatically cancel the other. She could stick with peace and see the yippies. I'll meet you later at our church, Connie said to Sunny with pleading eyes directed toward Becky. She sprinted to catch up with Karen and Carlos. At the corner, a bearded marshal standing on a wall was imploring people not to go to the Department of Justice. If you believe in what we came for, stay to your right. For peace, he shouted. Turn to the left to stop the trial, rebuffed a wild-eyed young man. Free Bobby Seale. Connie veered left, along with Karen and Carlos. And they were escorted toward the demonstration by a helmeted protester, like an usher in a theater. Police were waiting for them with a droning generator that powered a tower of lights and a military-grade pepper gas sprayer. It looked like a war movie set. Boisterously prancing and shouting, the yippie men made a theatrical grand entrance. They carried tall poles with giant papier-mâché faces. Absurdist caricatures. They were like hideous, cavorting spirits from Dante's hell. Vice President Spiro Agnew as a court jester, Attorney General John Mitchell as a butcher, Judge Julius Hoffman as the bumbling, blind cartoon character, Mr. Magoo. It was a ridiculous but pointed war commentary beyond anything Connie could have dreamed of. Her decision to go left at the corner had paid off, until it went sour. The plan is to hang them, Karen said, giving the informed reporter's view of what was going down, and dance on their graves. The stick puppets bobbed up and down as the crowd was taught a chant. 1, 2, screw, Magoo. 3, 4, stop the war. 5, 6, pick up bricks. 7, 8, smash the state. 9, 10, do it again. Welcome to the Abby Hoffman and Jerry Rubin show, one night only, Karen said. She pointed to a guy pretending to bang a 20-foot-high papier-mâché judge's gavel. That's justice being used to crush dissent. Now numbering in the thousands, the throng marched around the block, fast and loud, many in football and motorcycle helmets, carrying rocks and bottles. That could only mean one thing. There would be head bashing. Connie hesitated. Carlos, seeing the uncertainty on her face, took her hand. A small pack of helmeted weathermen agitators broke from the crowd and ran to the front of the DOJ building, its stately pillars lit gold in the low-setting sun. 3 times they took down the American flag to replace it with an NLF flag or to turn it upside down. 3 times the marshals forced the men aside and reinstated the American flag. Be cool, be cool, be cool, the marshals said, hands high and VP signs. And on cue, lobbed rocks and bottles showered the building and crashed among the marshals. For the next hour, it was mayhem. A wall of police stepped forward in full riot gear and gas masks. They charged, clubbing demonstrators. Windows were broken. Red smoke poured out of a first-floor office. Undulating war cries resonated. Firecrackers exploded. Crimson paint splattered the carved limestone facade. Volleys of tear gas canisters flew overhead. A curling, acrid fog filled the street. In classic subversive street theater parody, a Yippie and Weatherman cast ran to the oversized doors and banged the massive decorative knockers, knowing no one would ever let them in. They stuck NLF flags in the tall Art Deco lights. They posted signs reading, "Building condemned." Connie dropped Carlos's hand so she could move freely. She wove around a policeman. A bottle flew by her ear, smashing into the wall, barely missing her. The man next to her went down, holding his head as a whirring tear gas canister hit him. The metal canister clattered to the pavement by Connie's feet. A swirling chemical cloud blinded her. It seared her nose, mouth, and throat. She sank to the ground, hands over her burning face, vomit in her mouth. Terror hot in her veins, regret cold in her bones. A firm hand grabbed her arm. It was Carlos. He led her to a water fountain in a nearby courtyard. They both flushed their faces in the water until the burning subsided. There were still a few skirmishes on the street. Spotting a policeman on patrol, Carlos warily waved Connie farther back into the alcove. She dried her face with her shirt tail and lit a cigarette. "Do you see Karen?" she asked. "She'll be fine. She's a survivor." Carlos leaned against a wall. "Look at what I have." He opened his hand to reveal a spent tear gas canister. "It's something to show my kids someday when I tell them about how we changed the world." Connie took a long drag. She was glad to be here with Carlos, proud to have shown Karen she was in the game, but sure that Becky and Sonny had been right. She had let her seductive hippie curiosity, her need for Carlos's approval, the thrill of the moment, override her innate sense of right and wrong. The keenness of her mistake, of her malleability, formed her resolve to stand up for truth as she saw it. "Do you expect the trial to stop or Bobby Seale to be released because paint was thrown on the building?" she said. "How did we change anything for the better?" He put the canister into his jacket pocket and pulled Connie to him. "It's not that simple. It's about dramatizing the issue until it can be no longer ignored. You can't change policies by raising a peace sign. Unacceptance becomes real when someone breaks a window." "Broken windows target people, not policy," Connie said. "It is that simple." She inhaled the sharp, sour odor of his sweat, mingled with the sickening smell of the tear gas. The charge of the fracas still ran through Connie, a sexy exhilaration that made her want as much of Carlos as she could get. She allowed her body to relax against his to see what it felt like. "Nothing is simple," said Carlos, moving his face close to hers, "but I believe in the struggle." Lately, I'm wondering if the weatherman is more right than wrong. All revolutions start with violence. It did right here in America. That's why they call it the Revolutionary War. Connie put her open hand lightly on his cheek and gently ran her finger down the nubby short beard on the edge of his jawline. The tugging back and forth in their opinions was an aphrodisiac to her. She rose to her tiptoes and softly kissed his lips. Fred Hampton says fighting fire with fire sounds good, but the best way to put out fire is with water. He tightened his embrace, accepting her kiss. Crossing a threshold from which she would never return, she kissed him again, full and hard, letting all of her pumped-up adrenaline release. For Connie, it wasn't a moment when all else fell away. It was a moment when all else came together. The words of Kennedy, King, and Hampton, the photographs in Life magazine, the rightness of leaving all she had known for all she did not know, the questioning and exploration of truth. When the chill in the air, the smell of sweat and tear gas, and the excitement all became more real. It was almost more than she could handle. She stepped away and let a probing draft of wind cool the space between them. Carlos picked up Connie's hands. Her small fingers warmed inside his broad palms like a safe haven. You should head for your church so Sonny knows you're okay. But before you go, I have to tell you something. My plans have changed. I'm going to Cuba as part of the Venceromas Brigade. The what? Said Connie, pulling her hands away. The Venceromas Brigade. It's Spanish for We Shall Overcome. It's a weatherman group. Connie practiced saying the unfamiliar Spanish word, just like me, in her head so that she could say it again. Venceromas. You're joining the weathermen? It's a new solidarity group. We're going to help you cut sugarcane. If Cuba can harvest 10 million tons by the end of the year, Castro will have enough money to split from Cuba and trade with the West. An independent Cuba can help Puerto Rico become independent too. Everyone in Cuba is going to the fields to cut cane to make the goal. I thought you were leaving IU to become a neighborhood organizer. Connie stepped back and scowled. She'd been looking forward, more than a little, to him being in Chicago. I can help Puerto Rico too. It's not one or the other. I read an article about how Cuba is changing, Connie said, remembering a Life piece from earlier in the year, something about how their progress depends upon merging conscience with consciousness. Exactly, Carlos said, flashing an admiring smile. That's why I'm going. Puerto Rico will need this kind of thinking once it escapes the grip of the American oppressor. Gaining independence is one thing, running the country is another. Otherwise, we'll be like a dog that catches the car. When are you leaving? How long are you going to be gone? Connie hoped for a month at most. Right after the winter semester ends, early February. I'll be back in May, unless something comes up. We'll take a converted Cuban cattle ship from Canada. It's illegal to travel there from the U.S. We'll live in camps in the fields, and we're not cutting cane. We'll attend sessions on how to create a new society after oppression. Then we'll tour Cuba, see farms, factories, and schools, visit people in their homes, talk to workers, make connections. Put out, Connie thrust her hands deep in her pockets. Where'd she be in the summer was anybody's guess. I'll have moved out of the crash pad by then, she said. That was the one undisputed fact Connie knew. I'll find you. Stay in touch. Carlos bent his head to kiss her again. She offered a testy cheek. A few months later, Connie is living at the Indianapolis Free Press Collective and working in the upscale Sam's Attic restaurant as a line cook. And Carlos is still gone. It's the 4th of July weekend, and she's at the 1970 Atlanta Pop Festival in rural Georgia, billed as 3 days of love, peace, and music like Woodstock. It was the last of the great rock festivals in America, with a crowd of some 200,000 or so. The next day was deliriously hot, 104 supersaturated degrees, so hot it was hard to breathe. All performances postponed until the temperature dropped. Tens of thousands of half-naked, sweaty, stoned fans left to amuse themselves. Connie, frayed around the edges from 2 days, going on 3, of acid and dancing, was glad to have some time to bang around aimlessly. She and Sonny walked up the dirt road that bisected the grounds. It was an immense party. Music clashed on car radios, couples screwed in the open, everybody was out strutting their stuff. With little to do, the bored fans were laying down cash in the concession stands. They bought floppy leather hats, tie-dyed shirts, John Lennon lithographs, pipes, jewelry, and posters while munching on hot dogs, hamburgers, peaches, boiled peanuts, and fried chicken dinners. Sonny worked the crowd, peddling brown sugar joints, bags of white powder, and foil twists of pills. Connie wandered away, zeroing in on a farmer, selling watermelons off the tailgate of a pickup truck. She plopped down $1, her druggy, dry mouth salviating. With a machete, he whacked a melon in half, and then each half into thirds. She picked up a thick metal section with both hands and sucked out a bite of the sweet, seedless center, juice running down her chin. "Hey, jump on," yelled a guy, one of the many kids sitting on the hoods and trunks of the cars inching by. "There's a creek down the road. We're going swimming." Connie waved him on. She only wanted a spot of shade to finish off the watermelon and kick back. As she watched the shuffle of people and cars from under a tree, she noticed a bootleg pharmaceutical pill pusher. Tucked between the stalls. They were selling Thorazine, White Crosses, Valium, and birth control pills out of suitcases. The longest line was for birth control pills. Connie, just a freshman in high school 5 years ago, hadn't noticed when the Supreme Court had struck down 100-year-old state bans on using birth control in marriage, ruling that the government had no business sticking its nose into private family matters. Now she knew the fight against the bans, even the existence of birth control pills, was mostly due to Margaret Sanger's 40 years of activism. As far as Maggie was concerned, a woman was only free if she was in charge of her body, choosing the timing of her pregnancies. Maggie was the one who had coined the term birth control. The pill was her idea. She had rustled up the money for its research, but it was all still illegal for Connie, unmarried and underage. Becky had managed to get a prescription by telling the doctor she needed some for her wedding night, a 1-month supply at a time. She worried that the doctor would cut her off if he noticed she never got married. Connie dropped her watermelon rind in a pile by the road. This was her chance. Dial packs were $1, cheaper than one bad trip purple micro dot. She could get a year's supply. By the time she made it through the line and scored a dozen pack of pills, tall columns of clouds towered in the sky. Trash whirled in the air. The temperature was dropping sharply. Rain was on the way. "The festival is over tomorrow," Connie said, walking back to the campsite with Sonny. "The newspaper is almost dead. The free store is dead. The collective is collapsing around me. I need a new place to live, a new plan." "Drop out and tune in," Sonny said, giving Connie a sidelong glance. "You've been in the heavy zone for too long." "You might be right. Bombs, guns, blood, gangs, they're always in my peripheral vision. They're in your head because they're in your life," Sonny said, shaking her head in disbelief. "Remember me telling you about a party Max and I went to at a homesteading commune near Bloomington? My friend Bill owns the place. His family has a lot of money. A big log cabin in a geodesic dome in the woods, cool and low-key, just what you need. Homesteading? I can't even grow a garden." "They've got a garden, but it's not about gardening. It's about changing yourself instead of others, becoming one with Mother Earth. I feel almost enlightened when I'm there. Bill has this uncanny ability to help me tame my demons. If it weren't for Max, I'd live there. If he wants to move back to Chicago, I guess I'm going to go with him." "Move back? Why? Are you in love with him?" "Hanging out with bands, that's what I love. And he puts up with me and my evil ways. There are lots of recording studios in Chicago. I could get a real sound mixer job, meet lots of bands." Connie gave Sonny a calculating look. She was making sense. "Jack would be disappointed with me if I left Sam's attic," she said. "Don't be so sure," Sonny said. "He's friends with Bill's too, and I heard they might start a bakery together." Sonny found a pen at their campsite and drew a map on the margin of the festival program. "Sassafras Ridge, in Brown County, east of Bloomington, on Mayapple Road. Tell Bill I sent you." Connie tucked it into her bag. Homesteading. A far cry from newspaper hustling, draft resistance, and French sauces. Sonny was right. She did need a break from the gangs and the FBI surveillance. That's how she'd explain it to Carlos, to Becky, and to her mother, who was just warming up to the work Connie was doing to stop the war. She remembered the glossy Life magazine photos of the California commune and the woods and the gong. A new way of living, the article had called it, with meaningful work, mutual love, and spiritual rebirth. A rebirth, that's what she needed. By midnight, the rain had long stopped, and Jimi Hendrix was 2 hours late. Spotlights from the 20-foot towers shined upon a lonely drum kit and some microphones. A light show swirled on the screen. Hendrix was introduced, but the stage remained empty. Impatient whistles and calls spread across the field. "We want Jimmy!" Connie and Sonny flicked their lighters, holding the flames high, 2 of thousands of pleading lights twinkling in the dark night. "Maybe he's here, but he can't make it on stage," said Connie. "Some people say he's headed downhill, deep, stupid, in drugs." "People say all kinds of shit. Drugs or not, he's never missed a show," replied Sonny as he nonchalantly strolled on stage with a drummer and a bass player. To erupting cheers, they tried out a few chords. Da, 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 da. Jimmy walked up to the mic. "All right, baby, dig this. I'm going to talk to you." Da, 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 da. Connie jumped with both arms above her head. "It's happening. It's really happening. Jimi Hendrix is playing and we're here." The band flung themselves into the set. The light show pulsed red. Jimmy blazed iridescent in the bright spotlights, shimmering in his green, red, and gold shirt. His long bell sleeves flew like pinwheels. The green scarf headband wrapped around his trimmed afro flowed behind him. His white guitar pulled taut against a purple leather strap as he unleashed a searing guitar solo. His long fingers flew up and down the frets in geometric tracers and patterns from Connie's megadose of Lavender Leary. She was close enough to see Jimmy's face. He had high cheekbones and a thin mustache draped over full lips slightly open. Eyes closed, calm, with brows pulled together in concentration, he absorbed the audience's energy. "Everyone stand up," instructed Jimmy late in the set, even though everyone was already standing. "I'm going to play the Happy Birthday song to America. Sing along with feeling." He played a few vibrating, "Oh, say, can you see" chords, but then with a swoop down to the floor and back, he veered and shredded his way through purple haze. 2 songs later, the band stopped again. Jimmy left the stage as if finished, and the air thickened with shouts of "Jimmy, Jimmy!" Guided by a stagehand, he returned and played a screechy, raggedy version of Stone Free, gunning his guitar at the end until it returned to the "Oh, say, can you see" chords. Heat lightning flashed above in the night sky. Synced fireworks exploded. Jimmy ruptured the Star-Spangled Banner. He bent notes into bombs and demonstrations, twisted feedback into the cries of war, reverberated the anger in veins standing out in necks. He sustained the land of the free so long and so high that it broke Connie's heart. This was the sound of America telling itself apart. The song and the sound of a country born in war, always at war, a country in need of a rebirth, just like she was. Hours and bands later, a faint sunrise grew on one horizon and an indigo night ebbed on the other. The field around Connie was full of semi-conscious kids. Trash was skidding along in the light breeze, and the music had yet to stop. She wrapped her arms around her chilly legs. Sonny had wandered off, and this moment of solitude among the masses was exquisite. Connie was floating down gently from her high. Richie Havens sat on a tall stool with his guitar. She'd missed singing Freedom with him and everyone else at Woodstock. She thought she would get to sing it now. But instead, backed up by a bongo drum and a bass guitar, he sang the Beatles' sweet, hopeful, everything is all right song, Here Comes the Sun. As the sun warmed Connie, the all-seeing eye painted beneath the stage stared back. Everything was going to be all right. But of course, that's not true.